Welcome to episode 6 of the Non-fungerbils podcast. Today, Zach Burks joins us for a chat. Zach is the co-founder and CEO of Mintable, a platform that we use to batch mint our Gerbil NFTs. Zach gives us an insight into what it's like building a platform like this, and gives us some teasers of the big changes that are coming in the new year with their new platform, along with his vision for the future of non-fungible tokens and how he sees the space growing. We also cover the topical discussion at the moment around intellectual property and fakes within the art and NFT markets. If you enjoy this episode and would like to help us grow, then please leave us a review wherever you downloaded it from, and or share it on social media. Listen out at the end, where we read out some of the really brilliant 100x leveraged gerbil stories that were submitted in the last month. And we also give out the name of the next gerbil who needs a backstory. We hope you enjoy the episode. Zach Burks from Mintable, thank you for joining us. We've been in contact for a few months now. You helped us mint our Gerbil NFTs and set it up so that we're hosting our own metadata as well. We'd definitely like to talk about Mintable, but before we start, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the space.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely, thanks for having me on. And when you guys reached out for your non-fungibles NFTs, it was really quite interesting because you were one of the first people to reach out and specifically like request to be able to have your own metadata. And we have all these features out of the box already, but it's nice to see that we got that kind of user base that you come on, you have your own metadata, you want to do this unique NFT. So it's really cool. And yeah, it's been a few months, but a little bit about me. So I got into Bitcoin in 2012, and it was, just like everyone else when you found it, I didn't really know what it was. And after a few years of kind of playing around, I was in the military, and so I didn't have much time to devote to it. I had a military career I was doing. After I got out, I was still in crypto. I still bought crypto, and I thought of myself as a quote unquote trader with no financial trading experience, and it was interesting. But I needed a new job, and so I've always been a nerd, and I went to programming. So as I was kind of getting some professional training on programming, I would never do my programming assignments. I would always convert it over to like Solidity or whatever hot language I was learning at the time. Which after about late 2015, it went over to Ethereum and Solidity. So I realized I was like, what am I doing? Why do I want to learn all this traditional programming when I can learn this hot new thing called like the blockchain? And so in around late 2015, I got real serious into Solidity development, smart contracts, and Ethereum. I converted all my Bitcoin over to Ethereum, and I never looked back. I still don't have Bitcoin. It's all Ether, and I love it, right? I mean, it's been a bad week for Ether, but it's okay. So, yeah, and NFTs always piqued my interest. When I first saw the CryptoPunks, it was interesting at the time, right? Because I saw it. Everyone else, that also saw it was like, hey, what are these kind of collectible blockchain items? There wasn't a standard. There wasn't the ERC 721 standard at that time, and so it was just this new kind of technology that we can use smart contracts for. And unfortunately, I didn't buy CryptoPunk because I think I found it like maybe a week or 2 weeks after it came out. There wasn't a wide selection of them, and I didn't find any I liked. But I kept kind of paying attention. I was still doing smart contract development, and one day I was watching a hackathon, the ETH Waterloo hackathon, and someone that was presenting there was this team called CryptoKitties, and they were presenting their beta. And I'm sitting in California, I'm watching this, and this is in Canada. And they said, anyone who's at the hackathon, feel free to load up the beta and play the game out. And so I'm sitting at home, and I'm like, what, a blockchain game? Yeah, I want to play this. I've never heard of a game on the blockchain before. So I was playing their beta, and I was like one of maybe 15 or 20 people. And they had some prizes. Like if you get the first googly eyes, you get like 1 Ether. So I ended up just spamming it all day, and I was like one of 20 or so people that was playing it, and I won the first two prizes. So it's a weird flex, but I like to say that I was the first person to make money on CryptoKitties because I won those first two prizes. And yeah, and Benny, the creator, I was messaging him trying to claim my two ether, and he was like, "Oh man, I really didn't want someone to win two prizes, but it's okay if you're such a big fan, come on over to the booth by the balloons,
That's
and
amazing.
we'll chat." And I was like, I'm in California right now," and so he really didn't like that at that point because I won two, and then I wasn't even at the hackathon. So that was how I found NFTs, and once again, it was before the standard. It was just this non-fungibility, and that kind of opened my mind. Being a smart contract developer, I was like, whoa, this is really interesting. There's so many possibilities. And I guess you can say it's like a drug, and I was hooked because since then I have not done really anything unrelated to NFTs. I've worked with a supply chain tracking company called Harvest Network that is providing food traceability in California for tracking, say, strawberries along their supply chain and then presenting the data to the consumer at the end of the line. And we were using NFTs for that. I actually have a paper published with the IEEE, which is the International Engineers and Electrical Engineers Association, on using smart contracts and NFTs for like IoT devices and traceability with Harvest Network. And then I came up with this idea of Mintable. And at the time, NFTs were still fairly new, and there was no way to make an NFT unless you knew how to code your own smart contract. And there was no way to manage an NFT, which I thought was quite weird. You can go to my Ether wallet and you can manage, your Ether, your ERC20s, and you can interact with smart contracts, but there wasn't anything specific to NFTs. So I made that, and that was the start of a long journey. Right, I ended up moving to Asia to work on Mintable, and now Mintable has grown, and we're a lot bigger than obviously when we started. That's kind of required for a startup, and we have a full product launch that's coming out here the new year, and we have high hopes that it's going to kind of change the entire ecosystem of NFTs and the asset classes that we see on NFTs. So really passionate about them, and I think that there's so much potential for them. So that's kind of my long background.
That's a very interesting background. At some point you went to the Consensus Developer Academy. Where did that play in?
So that was in, I think, June of 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was the first online academy. They did one in like Dubai in person, and then they had one online. And I signed up for that. And that's where I actually came up with the idea for Mintable, because I needed something for them to, they grade you, they give you a test. And so I was like, well, I like NFT, so I'll just make an NFT generator. Right? I thought it was going to be this easy little thing I was going to do, get graded, and be done with it. Once I made it, I realized I was like, well, if people are going to use this tool to make NFTs, they don't know how to use smart contracts. They don't know how to code smart contracts. So I'm going to assume that they probably also don't know how to go to my Ether wallet or my crypto, but it wasn't there at the time, and then put in like the ABI and the contract address, and then pick the function to transfer their token. Right? They didn't know how to do that, so I was like, I got to make a manager. So I made the manager. And then after I made it, I was kind of Googling around, and I realized like, hey, there's no NFT manager on the internet, and there's no NFT generator on the internet. I was like, I just made the first. And so we played around with so many different ideas. Like we were thinking maybe we should make a social media site out of this using NFTs. Maybe we can do like this new kind of platform. And we went through a lot of different changes, and then finally we decided on what we're doing now. And so I realized after the Developer Academy that what I delivered for them is not what Mintable is now, right? What I delivered was kind of like this, just it's a generator and a manager, right? But I realized like, hey, this is a really good business idea. Like, not only is it a good business idea, but it's doing something that I love, like NFTs, and we get to push the ecosystem of what NFTs are, and people liked it and people were using it. And so we released like this was, in the Developer Academy was like in June, and And towards the end of that, I moved to Asia to work on this, and we released the alpha in December 1st. And once we released the alpha, we saw people using it. People were contacting us saying, hey, they had questions. Businesses wanted to use this for all sorts of things. We have a lot of businesses that reach out to us. And so at that point, I was like, yeah, okay, that was a great proof of concept that really worked. Let's work on the beta, right? So we made the beta, and that launched in April. And that's what's kind of up on the site now. It's had a few changes, some bug fixes, but it's still a little buggy, right? And since about August of this year, we've been working on the full launch. And the full launch it's been delayed a little bit here and there, but it should be coming out like the end of January or February. And that's a complete like revamp. It's got all these new features that most NFT platforms don't have. It's I don't want to give away too much, but it's essentially what we think is the asset class of items that you have as NFTs now that you see on like OpenSea or things like CryptoKitties. There are two categories of items: game items and collectibles. And a lot of those are intertwined, right? A collectible is a game item, and that's what gives it its value, like a CryptoKitty. But that's about it. We have a few cases of like tickets and like event ticketing, and then we also have the domain names now, which are 721s. But besides the about 95% of it is those collectible game items. And besides that, we don't see much use case. And I really personally feel like this is why after 2 years, we don't have a large number of people using NFTs. Is because we're stuck. We're in a niche, like we're in crypto, which is a niche. And then we're within a sub niche of a niche, which is NFTs. And then within that, we're even a smaller niche of people that play games and collect things, right? And so we need this like broadening of the ecosystem, and that's what we're trying to provide.
Well, it's a big vision, right? We talk a lot about the mainstream coming to the space, and everyone sort of suggests that it's potentially gaming that's, or people feel that that's the most likely way, is that something like CryptoKitties, but 100 times the size. And away we go, and then people will come down the rabbit hole and see what else is there. They can collect art, or buy their NFT tickets, or I guess the question would be, what is it that I mean, maybe you can't give it away, but what is it that Mintable is now that Mintable will become that will allow that kind of much wider use case to come in?
Well, so, I mean, yeah, game items are definitely one category where, there's hundreds of millions of people that play games. And so it seems like the most obvious example of, well, let's just do game items as NFTs and we get all those hundreds of millions of users. But the problem still lies in the fact that, a game player, a gamer, their knowledge is for the game, right? If you play some MMORPG like World of Warcraft or something, you know that game in and out. You put thousands of hours or hundreds of hours into this game, and that's what you know really well. So when you ask them to now understand the security side and the immutability side of blockchain, you're really getting like a cliff where you lose a lot of users because they're like, hey, I just want to get my rare sword, collect my gold, and level up, right? I don't want to have to learn about all this other private key stuff. So it makes sense off the bat, but I think that it's just asking too much. I don't think it's going to go away. I think that if, say, like World of Warcraft or League of Legends or any of these really large games implemented NFTs, it would be huge, right? And like, it's kind of what Gods Unchained is doing. They're doing really good stuff. I've been an active player in Gods Unchained since the beta was out. I have hundreds of cards, and I think that they're doing great things. But ultimately, NFTs are so broad that, like, just off the top of my head, this is actually another paper I'm working on for the IEEE, is like identity. Imagine if an NFT was actually similar to a passport, right? Where you had this potentially biometric information, like your fingerprint or your facial scan, that could be tied to this NFT, and you could be using that as a sort of identity purpose. Things like that, apply to everyone. They're like a bed. Everyone has an identity. Everyone needs a bed to sleep in, right? Not everyone needs to play World of Warcraft. And so I think that there's this a lot of room for improvement. And I kind of feel like game items are the low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing to go after. You can integrate it across the board. You can get a few thousand players. As for what we're doing, basically, if you think about, like I mentioned, the asset class that we have now, tickets, collectible game items, domains, right? If you think about those are limited to the scope of the users that are interacting with the blockchain for these items. We've just touched on the game items, but if we move to something like, say, tickets, asking let's just say a soccer mom who wants to go see maybe some concert of some rock star that she really likes, asking her to get on board with a wallet and things like that, it's just really hard. But if you change that asset class to something that is only used by technical people, right? People, like us three, for example, we're on a podcast. We're familiar with different parts of our computer and different kind of files and different ways that technology works. We're also on blockchain. But if you change that asset class to go away from people that don't know technology, such as gamers who just know the game, or ticketing, which is like your average person who may not have any background in technology. They may not, for example, like my mom, she can't use a computer to save her life, but she'll go to get a concert ticket, right? So if we change that demographic, which is what we're trying to do at Mintable, to this technical demographic, and allowing these people that are used to, I'm trying to pick my words carefully here. We haven't publicly announced it what we're going to do yet, because we've been working on it since like February of this year is when we were like, this is what we need to do. But we haven't announced it because once we kind of had this idea, I was like, wow, why is no one else doing this? This seems like this is just like how has no one else thought of this idea? Are we really the first? Like, come on. And so we've really kind of kept it secret because we have a really good feeling that once it comes out, there's going to be a massive amount of people that go, oh my God, that's a great idea. Why? I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to do this. And we're going to have all these, like, it's validation, right? When you have other businesses sprout up doing the same thing that you're doing, that's validation. And we saw that earlier with our beta as well. And so we're trying to be real secret about it. But essentially, we're changing that asset class so that it's not game items, it's not collectibles. It could be. Those fall into the category that we're moving into. But the flexibility is much more. It's basically anything that a content creator would be interacting with, right? It's going to be for content creators, which, believe it or not, most of us are content creators, right? We post things on social media all the time, which is our content. And so it'll be geared towards allowing this new kind of ecosystem.
It sounds like a good approach to change your focus on the people who are actually going to be able to use the technology already anyway, or find it a lot easier. Where does privacy fit into that with the idea of zero-knowledge NFTs? And privacy being a big problem with all tech at the moment. It seems like it's something that we should all be moving towards, like in the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that the big tech companies that we have out now, like Google, Amazon, I think privacy is not a very important aspect. And I wish that we, with this new Instable upgrade, on Ethereum, we're going to have kind of an easier time of implementing something like ZK Snarks. But in terms of privacy with NFTs, that's a quite complicated subject, and that's actually what I've been exploring on this paper, which is for identity on NFTs and biometrics. And the problem is you essentially have to do a ZK Snark scenario where, for the people who don't know, that's a zero knowledge proof where basically, two people can present their information without exposing that information. So they can say, hey, I do own this, and I do have the password for it, but I'm not going to tell you the password. I'm going to tell you something else, and you're going to be able to verify that only I have the password, right? Kind of like in those spy movies when they're always like, oh, I knew it was him because he said something from our childhood, and I knew I can trust him, right? So it's similar to that. But in terms of Mintable and privacy, I don't think that's going to be really anything like groundbreaking that we're touching on. It's really hard. The blockchain is very public, and so it's really hard to change that. The best thing we can do is is with the flexibility that we offer, you're able to like encrypt your metadata. So for example, with your gerbils that are NFTs, you could do, say, a giveaway of a reward system, and the reward is actually included in the metadata publicly, but it's encrypted, so no one knows what that data says. And then since you guys are the ones doing the giveaway, you would be able to decrypt that data because you have the private key to decrypt that, and you would be able to let's say sell 100 of them, and one of those would be a $10,000 giveaway, or all paid vacation kind of thing, and you would be able to decrypt that and publicly show people that that was the reward, and it's always been the reward the whole time. But privacy is a really hard topic to solve. It's really broad, and that's why it's such an important aspect.
So how many are involved at Mintable at the moment? You were talking about we from quite early on there. Was there a co-founder?
Yeah, we have a co-founder. We have a team of 6, and so we've expanded over the years. That's why I went to Asia, because it's easier. There's a big expat blockchain community in Thailand, and it's a lot harder to find people in Silicon Valley than it is to find some expats who are passionate. So I went over to Asia, and within about 2 months, we found our co-founder and some other team members. And so we've got 6 now. 4 of us are based in Singapore, and then the other 2 are decentralized, right, or global in that manner.
And what did you do about funding as well? So you had your donation token, which we bought, token number 3, which is pretty cool that we got in there that early. But
that's really cool. Token 3, that's awesome, man. Funding, and thank you, by the way, for supporting us with that. That's been really helpful. In terms of, that's where most of the revenue that we've generated has come from.
Oh, really?
Is from those donation tokens. And funding's, it's a struggle, right? So I've been self-funding as the founder since we started, and I've put in pretty much the amount that I allocated. I said, I was going to spend X amount on Mintable, and then after that, we need to raise money. So we were just accepted into a government-backed incubator, accelerator incubator in Singapore called Longhash, and Longhash has been really amazing. They've really helped hone down a lot of things for us and help us kind of grow as a startup. And we're going through and doing roadshows and pitching and trying to raise money from investors currently with them. So that's an ongoing process to get our seed round. And hopefully it goes well, right? But if not, I've always had in the back of my mind, right? You have to have your worst case scenario. This is what I learned in the military. I've always had in the back of my mind that we don't get funding, and what's going to happen. And well, the answer has always been that I will see through Mintable to the full launch, because the full launch should be good enough that we're one of the top D apps, if not like top 3, within a very short amount of time. And in that regard, we should have a lot of revenue coming in as well. Currently, we don't have much revenue because we're not built. It's a beta, right? We're not built to generate a lot of profit. But the full launch is more profit orientated for us as a business, but it's also built in a manner so that we've removed, like right now there's some fees, right? So if you use us to use like our API to store data, it's like $2 one time. It's a one-time fee. You pay $2 and that's it, right? We've removed all those fees, right? We have now the fees we have are transaction fees. So like that discount card that removes the fees on the beta, and in the full launch is going to remove that transaction fee, which is going to be beneficial for the exchange that we're building, right? So we're having a decentralized exchange that we've been building as well, and that's going to be coming out. And then there's some like advertising revenue. So you'll be able to advertise and promote your store and things like that, very traditional. And the whole point of that is because if we're trying to target normal people and we want to reduce the friction, this is why we don't have like our own ERC20 token. If we're trying to reduce that friction, you got to build a model that's something that you're used to. Everyone's used to Amazon and eBay and Etsy and Lazada, all these models where you have a store, you sell your items, you promote your store, and there's a transaction fee. That's about it, right? And that's normal. And if it's normal to them, they'll use it. I'm sure you guys being in the blockchain space, you've seen these new projects, and you have to kind of read into and find the Medium article to understand that business model that they've employed, right? They have some new business model where you send your Ether over, you stake your Ether, you get some ERC20, you get to play their game, right? Then you can sell it back, and that's uncomfortable, right? Like coming from your standpoints, and I mean myself as well. I see this and I'm like, this is uncomfortable for me. I don't know this model. I don't know if I'm getting scammed. I don't know what's going on, and so I don't do it. And so we try to remove all that. One of the other big things is we also we've been partnered with Nifty Gateway for a while, and Nifty Gateway allows for us to accept credit card. So in our full launch, there's going to be no credit card. I mean, there's going to be the ability to pay with credit card for everything. So that's another big thing, because one of our proud design choices was to be able to let anyone who, even if you never bought Bitcoin or Ether, if you don't have a wallet, you can do everything with a credit card, but you still retain ownership. You still get access to everything. You still hold on to everything, which is, I think, really huge. If you can go to your favorite dApp and pay with your credit card, that's that's an interesting change in the ecosystem of how you're going to interact with that dApp. You might spend a lot more money than you thought because you could just throw it on your credit card like everything else. So we're really excited for that.
There's definitely removing friction there, isn't there?
Right, yeah, it removes the friction, but it also implements some new problems on the businesses side, right? So
amazing. So who do you find is knocking on the door mostly for Mintable? Is it young projects like us that were looking for a solution? I know that the foam guys were using you. It was a sort of bit of validation on our part because we're huge fans of the foam project, and when we saw they were using you guys, we were like, yay, boom. So tell us a bit about who comes knocking, and are they in the area that you're most interested in? Obviously you want to get more mainstream users, but who are your early adopters?
Well, it depends. We have the people that use our app, and they are they're quiet. They're the quiet users. They don't email us. They don't they don't have any problems. They're the blockchain users, and the majority of those are artists. We have a lot of artwork that's being done through our platform. A lot of people that are fans of NFTs. They know NFTs. They have crypto kitties, and they say, "Hey, I want to do my own collectible series," right? And so they make their own series with us. And those, if you're an artist or if you're making your own collectible series, I would classify you as a project/business, right? You're trying to generate revenue, you're trying to get your branding, your name out there. But then we have the loud users, which are not necessarily in a bad way loud, but they're the ones that are actually emailing us. And the majority of those are businesses. Those are people like, it's kind of weird, but we've almost had every sector. We've had a project from Brazil that is trying to reforest the Amazon by using NFTs. We've had a project in South Africa that is doing renewable energy. We've had VR companies that are trying to make like game items. We're partnered with a company that is talent acquisition. They have the rights for like football players and supermodels, and we're working together to do some NFTs for them. It's really broad actually, and that's what I love about NFTs is that you have this massive scope of use cases. We've had a few corporations as well that are reaching out for like supply chain, and we also don't fit every category. It's hard to apply a solution to every one of those problems, and so some of those projects we have to say, hey, we're not a good fit. For example, this one VR game, they wanted like 50,000 game items, which is normal. But I was like, hey, with 721s, that's really hard to do. That's costly, that's time consuming. You're better off using a different standard and using a different system. So it's been a good scope. And with artwork, we have the problem of what kind of happened this week, right? And with Trevor, I believe, right? It was.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good segue into that. Maybe you can give our listeners a sort of rundown of what happened there.
So Trevor made some artwork, and he's got some really cool artwork actually, and he's very popular on Twitter. And I guess a few days ago, he found that he had some versions of his artwork that were screen grabbed, like from a phone, like not even done well. Like you can see the bar at the top of the phone, and they were reposted, claiming it to be, his art, trying to resell it. By just taking a photo of it. It's like if you went to a museum and you just simply took a photo of the Mona Lisa and said, hey, I'm selling you the Mona Lisa and I'm Da Vinci. So it's a complete fraud, right? And so he posted, he or she, I don't know who did it, but someone posted it on OpenSea. And they were trying to sell it, and Trevor found out. Trevor saw it, and it was this big thing going on right now, actually, where there's been a few others as well. It wasn't just his artwork that has been blatantly, screen grabbed and being resold. And the problem that we have here is because it's digital artwork, anyone can do that. Anyone could take a photo of their screen, or just capture their screen and then resell it. So this is something that is, it goes back to the traditional landscape of copyright infringement and trademarking and, protecting your IP. And with blockchain, we have this great benefit called immutability, so that you can take anything that you have and have a public record of it. And so by using the immutability of, say, the smart contract that Trevor has, he can tell everyone, hey, this is my contract address. This is where my artwork's at. If it's not at this address, then it's not mine.
I guess the issue then becomes that you rely on the buyer to make that, to do that research. Now, all of us, we sit here and we think, well, it's kind of obvious, but extrapolate out to when there's tens of millions of people interacting with this space, you're going to have a percentage that will fire from the hip and buy stuff when they see it, and to some degree the space lends itself to that. Like when you're going through some of these galleries, there's a lot of artwork that appears very quickly, and you can scroll and you can see something. There's a GIF there that just moves in a particular way, and amazing, let's get it. And sometimes when you're around the $50 mark, $100 mark, maybe some people are going to fire from the hip without doing any due diligence at all. And I think the problem there is that people will build business models around the 1 in every 1,000 who don't check. So then the question becomes, well, is it about the platform itself, and is there something that the platform itself can be doing? And in that way, they then put themselves potentially in the firing line because they said it was real, but it turns out that it wasn't, and you end up in some pretty deep questions about what marketplaces are, and I don't know what the answer is, but potentially it lies in the blockchain, it lies in the smart contracts. I just can't quite yet see how it all fits together.
Well, also the thing with Trevors is that it was a physical artwork. It wasn't even digital art. So the buyer, if the buyer was actually trying to buy his art and they'd done any research, they would have known that it doesn't exist as digital art. It just exists as physical art.
Yeah, and the question would then be, what if the person who bought the physical artwork then decided to just make digital copies of it?
This all goes into IP law, right? This is literally just protecting that intellectual property that was created. And when you have something like a traditional artwork that isn't represented as an NFT, and then someone puts it up there, it's the same as if I take, say, a book that someone is the author of, and then I go and I publish it online, and I give it out freely, or I try to sell it. And it goes back into that traditional IP realm. Now, you did bring up on a really good point, George, is you said marketplaces. And it makes me think of, when you're on eBay or Amazon and you type in Nikes or
That's right.
Air Jordans, who do you have to do the research as the buyer to say, hey, are these knockoffs? Are these real? Like, is this a real Prada bag that I'm buying for my girlfriend here? Or is this a fake one, right? And you can, most of the time you can tell by the price. But there's other times where you can't, and they're really good knockoffs. And the black market industry is a multiple $billion a year industry for this purpose, because people do build business models around that 1 in 1,000 sell. And so you're very, very correct in that regards. One of the things, though, that I think it is important to note is that since there's the benefit of the blockchain and it's a technology product, the marketplace itself does have some responsibility to play. But it's hard because we just talked about privacy as well. And so is there a violation of privacy if, say, the marketplace was able to scan every product made on it and then be able to keep a record of that product and then check for every new product, is this the same, right? And in some cases, like in the way that we're designing Mintable, we have some checks for things like this, but it's a very fine line, because you can't, if you have something private, right, or something that shouldn't be up there, we have two problems where either we're looking at private information that the user doesn't want us to see, or you have some illegal thing, like maybe like a Game of Thrones movie or something, right, that they don't have the rights to, but they're trying to resell. And then we are consciously able to say, hey, we know that that's Game of Thrones and we have this on our servers. That is a liability for us. And so it's a very fine line. So this all happened on OpenSea. And OpenSea has to be able to decide. Right now, it's probably done manually, but they have to be able to decide, hey, is this an infringement of someone's IP? If this is, how do we validate that? And what are our actions? We had a situation like this on Mintable, where someone took some Garbage Pail Kids. Garbage Pail Kids is like a knockoff of Cabbage Patch Kids, right?
Wow, that's taking me back. Jeez.
Yeah. I used to have some of those cards, actually.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, way back in the day.
Right. And a user made NFTs out of those and posted them on OpenSea to sell them using Mintable, right? And OpenSea immediately contacted that person and said, hey, do you have any legal contract with the company? I think it was Hasbro. I think Hasbro owns the rights to them. Like, do you have some contract or legally binding paperwork documents that says that you're able to resell this? And the answer was no, right? He just took them off of Google. And so those had to be removed. And it's a problem that the marketplace has to figure out and how to solve. But it's just the same for every online ecosystem. So if you look at something that's not a marketplace like YouTube, think of all the pirated content that's on YouTube that gets removed daily, right? They have advanced like AI machine learning algorithms to detect all this. Mm-hmm. And then every day there's still some new person out there making some new method to get around it. If you look at something like Amazon, but the knockoffs, what does Amazon do? How does Amazon deal with this? They remove things that have been like reported, right? They can't ensure that something is an actual, a Nike product or an actual Prada product. They have to go off of the feedback of the people that bought it or reported it. And this is a problem across the board. It goes for every marketplace.
I guess one of the things that I sort of worry sort of openly about, though, is like that there are, on eBay, for example, there are products that are just flagged as high risk, right? So mobile phones, computers, tablets, and to some degree, PayPal sort of stepped into the gap with this sort of escrow thing. It was kind of like, you're not getting your money yet until we know that the person is happy with what they've got, kind of thing. Now, in our world, that doesn't exist yet. Like when whoever bought Trevors' picture, phone snap of his picture, they're down $80. I'm wondering whether that is something we can mimic. Can we mimic that escrow? I mean, it kind of adds a layer of friction, right? And it adds an expense. Or maybe consumers can opt into that service and be like, okay, I'm as a seller of art, I'm willing to take this delay because I'm willing to back what I'm selling. Like maybe there are lessons we can learn from how those bigger companies have tried to solve this issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely possible to build an escrow system into every marketplace, including the NFT marketplaces. The problem comes into how is the escrow handled, and then if we go to Trevor's situation specifically, if the buyer bought it in the first place and then it went to an escrow service, the seller's not going to have a problem with it. The seller's going to say, hey, good to go. Give me, everything's fine here. Sure. And the buyer, they were already tricked because they pressed buy, right? So they already were not familiar. So they're not receiving, a box in the mail like Amazon or eBay, where they can say, hey, whoa, these are knockoff shoes. Look at these. These are made out of, cardboard. So they don't have that option. And they're just going to be like, yep, I just pressed buy, and yes, this is what I want. It's good to go. So now both parties have said, hey, everything in this transaction is good, and the funds just got released. So it is possible, but it needs to be built in a way where it's got like maybe, and this is just off the top of my head, but for something like this would be, a period where no matter what, there's a delay, right?
Yeah.
But
so Trevor can get on Twitter and say what the hell's going on.
Right, exactly. There's the time for someone to report it if it's infringing on anyone's rights. But then we go into the problem of it's a digital file, right? It's also a token on the blockchain. If you buy something, say a digital thing online, and you have to wait 7 days to get that email to you, how are you going to?
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's not going to work. Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
And then same with any token. I mean, you ever go to Binance and have to wait 7 days for your trade to be sent to you? No, right? No. It's a complicated problem to solve, and I'm sure that there's going to be some revolutionary kind of escrow system built that gets around this, and that will probably come in a few years' time.
I mean, maybe it's just an escrow system, like a bit of AI that just checks the image against a smart contract, and it's 3 seconds. So it's like so basically, it can just say to the consumer, this picture that you've bought, go ahead and buy it, but there's a red cross in the box that says this is from the original smart contract. But then there was no original smart contract for Trevor's artwork, so it may work in some instances and not in others.
Well, eBay really focuses the risk on the seller, doesn't it? So you could potentially have the buyer get the NFT straight away, but have the seller's funds locked up in escrow.
But then we go into the problem of, if I just received this photo of Trevor's artwork, and once I can just screen grab it on my end, and then I can say, hey, this is not what I want, give me my money back, because we're using an escrow service, but I've received my product, right? It's the same. It's in PayPal. On eBay, when you buy, say, let's go to shoes again, if I get my shoes and I say, hey, this is not what I wanted, sometimes you have to return that product to get your monies back, right? They don't let you keep it, otherwise there'd be a lot of fraud, and if they do, you can't do that more than a few times before you get blacklisted on returns. So with a digital product, it's once there's no way around it. Once you give that to the buyer, the consumer, the user, there's nothing you can do to protect it at that point, right? That would be considered malware if you're scanning their computer and say, hey, you can't move this file until the escrow is cleared, right? So it's also almost impossible to detect if someone takes a screen capture, right? So if I buy this NFT, take a screen capture, make a new smart contract, it would be very hard to be able to track all these smart contracts and use it as a reference, like what you were suggesting with AI, George, where you said, hey, let's have some AI that scans the image and then checks those references of smart contracts. That would also be really hard to do. It's a very complex issue, and this is why in the traditional world of IP, there's 6-figure lawyers that you buy, and there's these books that are the size of a car, basically, on all the different laws for intellectual property rights around the world. It's a complex issue for sure.
I guess where we might end up is that it, like in other areas of commerce, it becomes fairly endemic to the space. But as you go up the value layer, so one hopes that if you're spending $10,000 on a piece of digital art, the amount of research is commensurate to the amount of money that you're spending. So we sort of police ourselves a little bit through the sort of the value that some of these things are getting. Certainly, there is a lot more value entering into this space. Some of these things really are selling for quite sizable sums. Not to mention old $140,000 crypto kitty that went, but and with that, those funds coming into the space, the like we saw with the ICO, while those nefarious actors are going to come in, it's almost a sort of state of nature, really. I suspect that that above a certain price point, the buyers will have done their own thing, as well as the marketplaces. I guess the marketplaces can have this thing where it's like over $1,000, we do a manual check, or so. To kind of at least hold back the damage to some degree.
That's a really good idea, to take over a certain value and then manually verify it. Like on Twitter, right? If you have over a certain number of followers, you can get a verified little tick that says that I'm really Vitalik, or I'm really Elon Musk. That's a good idea. We might implement that, but You can send me the invoice later.
No, this is a open source space. We're all doing everything we can to help each other out, right?
That's good. And when you were talking, I had another idea as well. As a problem like this can really be resolved actually quite simply. It still requires a little bit of research on the buyer's side, but if, say, for example, you're a popular artist and you have your smart contract where you make all your artwork, right? You have your, say Trevor, he doesn't have NFTs, but if he did, say he had his Trevor smart contract, he knows the address to that smart contract, right? And just like his signature at the bottom of every print that he makes, he could include that address in the actual artwork, right? Just like his real life signature. And by doing that, any buyer would be able to look, even if, so in this case, it was a screen grab off the phone and it showed like the battery level and everything really bad. But even if it was cropped properly and it looked like it was the real version of it, the addresses would be different, right? If they made it on their new smart contract, that address would not match. And so the picture they're buying literally has, where you're going to find this at. And if they don't match up, it's not legit. And that's a really simple way for artwork that could be implemented.
That's a great idea, because we were talking earlier about how you have a distributed, like having your GPG key. You publish it in multiple places so that people can cross-reference what it actually is. If you actually have it as part of the signature, then that's doing that job for you. It's spreading it out far and wide.
Yeah.
Could you put it in a watermark? Could you obfuscate it? Because obviously some people are going to say, I don't want a long line of characters in my artwork, but some will. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's possible to do.
Well, thanks to ENS domains, it could just be a simple domain.
It could, yeah, absolutely.
But and you're right. Some people may not want to put all those characters at the bottom of their artwork like they do with their signature business. Their signature is small or sometimes artistic. You could do it as a watermark as well. Because a watermark is just text, right? That's like faded out, and so that text could be the address. So that is a really good method, and that's also something that the marketplace can do if it is over, just say $50. Say anything over $50, it just watermarks the image with the contract address, right? And then that watermark is removed upon purchase, right? So the public sees it with the watermark, and then when you buy it, it's just you see the real version, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I love the idea that when you're signing a piece of artwork, you could sign it as an ENS domain. Like you don't even put your proper name in. It's just, well, I mean, you would if you have, Zach at, XYZ or whatever it is. That feels crypto arty. I'm sure some people will do that.
So can you tie an ENS name to a contract? So for example, can we tie an ENS name to our Gerbils contract?
So actually, now that you bring that up, you may not be able to use the ENS for the contract. You can do it for the address of the owner, unless you specifically made like some proxy smart contract that, and I would have to look into this. So I don't know if this would actually work. I'm sure there's some like someone from the Ethereum Foundation listening to this thinking, "Oh my God, no, you can't." But I believe you can make a smart contract, your own, like a proxy contract that registers with the ENS system. You would have to pay for all the calls. Like you'd call the function and then that function would register and given the name and everything. And then that contract could also be the NFTs. So yeah, it's definitely not something that you would be able to do out of the box in some solution like what Mintable is, right? You would have to have a custom smart contract to know what you're doing. In fact, it may not have even ever been done before, or it could have been. I'm not too familiar with ENS domains in terms of writing code and pushing the limits of what they can do. I know about buying a simple one, but so you're right. Yeah, it may not be able to have an ENS name for the contract address, but you would be able to do that for your address. And then, of course, with the blockchain, you can simply just check, hey, who created this? Was it the address that is from that ENS domain, right? Mm-hmm. And so it still works. It's just like one extra step of the research that would need to be done. Although I do like the idea. A lot of crypto art, it's very like crypto-y, right? They've got like Bitcoin and QR codes and cryptography in there, all the green matrix lines and stuff. All that could be the actual address. It could be built into the artwork, right? A lot of the the cryptographic artwork that we see now, where there's like QR codes or just encrypted text that could be just simply the smart contract that it's being, created on. Of course, it's all up to the artist, though, right? Maybe the artwork doesn't want to have any of that, and they just want whatever they want. It's art.
I suppose that's not so human readable either, if you've got a QR code.
No, yeah, not at all. Nope, you would have to scan it and everything. And so, we have all these problems for like adoption, and you have like, oh, that's a great idea. And then you're like, damn, no one's actually going to be able to do that. You're going to have this third-party app. You're going to have to go do research. And this is the problem with cutting-edge technology. It's very similar to the internet in the early days when you had to type in the IP address before there was a domain name, right?
I guess the thing that people like yourself and projects working in the space, it's the excitement about the potential of digital scarcity and what it brings in all its possible forms that drives people forward to try and solve these problems. What excites you most about this area that's expanding out? I mean, part of the reasons why Luke and I decided to do this podcast was to try and track what we felt was this potential explosion of interest over digital scarcity. We've seen it in the store of value, we've seen it in the tokens, and so on and so forth. But I think you described it perfectly earlier. But what are the specific areas that make you get back to your desk every day and continue pushing the boundaries of what we can do?
Well, interestingly enough, if you look at something like a song, right? A song is an MP3, right? Or MP4, whatever. It's a file format, but it's a song, and that's all it is. It's a song. With NFTs, there's this potential that you can actually turn that song into multiple things. Right now, most of us don't buy songs anymore, but when we used to buy songs, or the people that still do buy songs, you download, you pay for this song, and it's a one-time thing. You pay for it once, you get the single or the album, and then you play that on your computer, on your phone, on your iPod, or whatever you have, right? And you only use that to listen to the song. That's it. You can't use that for any other purpose. But if that was somehow an NFT, you would be able to say, let's take tickets. You can combine that ticket where the artist can say, oh, hey, you downloaded my NFT MP3? Okay, cool. Well, I'm also going to give you free access to my next concert in, the town right across from yours, right? Or it's going to say, oh, you have that MP3 in your address still? Okay, how about I airdrop you like a new kind of reward, whether it's a way to redeem a signed T-shirt or something. And you're taking this thing that used to be one purpose, this like MP3, and you're turning it into really whatever the musician or artist can come up with. And that's what we've done with artwork, right? Is with artwork, we've taken an image on your computer and we've turned it into this collectible via scarcity. And scarcity doesn't really come into play with the MP3 unless you're doing like maybe a limited series where the first 100 get free backstage access to my, Snoop Dogg concert and I'm Snoop Dogg, right? Then the scarcity comes in, but there's so much more. For example, with artwork, we have the ability where you can change the metadata so that every day there's an artist doing this recently on Twitter. He's not the first by any means, but he's really promoting that every day he'll change that metadata so that you get new art in your wallet, right? Which is increasing that engagement. It's just the same as what you would do for that MP3. If that MP3 was an NFT, you would have a reason for them to say, come back and support you, is because they get to use that as a ticket. They get to use that to redeem some reward. In the case of the supermodels that we're working with, the NFT, I'm getting my acronyms all confused here. The NFT and the supermodel, one of those out of maybe 100 or 1,000 is attached to a phone call where the supermodel is going to call you because you have that NFT, right? So think about like that excites me more than the genetics of my cat, right? If I can buy this thing and I have a supermodel calling me, we're on a whole nother level. My credit card's already out, and I'm thinking, how much do I have in my bank account? Let's do this, right? So this is what excites me about NFTs, is the fact that it's just so broad. It's it's one of the problems we have when we go to investors. They go, what is your platform going to be used for? And I go, it's whatever you come up with. It's up to your imagination, right? And that's a bad answer because it's so broad. And that's really why I like NFTs, from identity to artwork to supermodels. It could all be done.
What do you think of this idea of secondary market revenue? So if I sell, like on Spotify, I sell my tunes are on there. I'm getting, well, albeit a pittance for billions of listens, but it's something. If I sell a piece of artwork in the physical world, it's gone. I might be able to retain the rights to do some prints, some limited edition prints, that kind of thing. How powerful an idea is it that in the digital space? Because in the theory, as a creator, I might be able to enjoy the secondary market, but also if I'm a sponsor of that creator, or I'm someone who found it and brought it to this platform, there's so many different ways that you could reward people along the journey, and that I find very compelling as a thought. Are we seeing that I know that on Super Rare that's part of their model. What do you think about that particular use case?
I'm not against it per se. I think it's a good. It's one of the mechanisms that can be done using the blockchain, right? But at the same time, when I think of, well, this is what I mentioned earlier, is you got to have something that a customer and a user is familiar with. And so when we think of, eBay, Amazon, Etsy, Lazada, the secondary market is it's not the same as like what, say, Super Rare is doing, right? Where I can't buy something from Amazon and then resell it. I mean, I could, but I could also be facing some legal issues for doing so, right? Because it's not necessarily my property. I can't pay for this podcast and then go resell it on my website, right? Now, you guys, if you build in a mechanism where you get maybe 10% of whatever secondary revenue, you may be okay with that. But in the real world, you can't do that. If I buy Nikes and resell them, Nike doesn't get a cut of that because there's no way to build that mechanism in. And so you're asking a user to learn this new business model, and sometimes it might be easy and you might be able to get it right off your bat, and sometimes it might be overly complicated and it might not be worthwhile. In terms of Mintable, we've thought about doing an affiliate system like this and having referrals or being able to get commission off of secondary sales. And we've chose not to do so simply because by doing that, you could be encouraging people to take content that's not necessarily the right kind of content, or content that's quality, that's not high quality or things like that, and just mass produce it, try to change hands, and it almost turns it into like an MLM, right? Where you got to get in first, get all these other people in. And that's a stigma that we face in crypto. Is anytime there's a new crypto project, everyone's concerned that it's a scam. Maybe they're not even concerned, or they just call it a scam and they don't know. But when you have models like that, it's more inclined to be looked upon as some negative, pyramid scheme, MLM. And I'm not saying what Super Rare is doing or other secondary markets is doing. And some people think secondary markets are going to be huge for crypto artwork and things like that. And that may be the case. But I don't think that everything needs that secondary market.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So when you're not, you've probably got your head in everything Mintable day in, day out, but when you're not doing that, what do you find yourself playing with from an NFT perspective? I mean, for me, I'm sort of always minting these clovers in the background. I don't know if you know the Clovers project. It's like it's an algorithm that finds these patterns, and some patterns are rare. I won't go into it all, but I don't know. That's the kind of thing that excites me from a nerd point of view. You said you were into, is it Gods Unchained? Was that one of the things? Is that what you spend a lot of your time?
No,
not that you've got much time.
I mean, I love Gods Unchained. I know about Clovers as well, and I don't spend a lot of time playing Gods Unchained. I do have like 600 cards, which is quite a bit.
Wow, yeah.
But it's not like if I'm not working, I'm playing Gods Unchained. It's not like that level, right? Not yet.
No, sure.
But besides Gods Unchained, I like to keep up to date and see like the newest things that are coming out as well, and I always try to give them a shot and play them a little bit. Sometimes I'll be frank, if like as soon as you open up the game, if you have to deposit like 1 ether to get your first item, I don't play those games, just in the literal and the non-literal sense of that phrase. because it's
Yeah,
just
yeah, I get you.
I feel like that's kind of ridiculous. You got to give something away for free and get for a game at least. So I think the NFT space is like constantly expanding. I have some ENS domains. I don't speculate on them, but I also don't like promote them. They're not like in my like Twitter handle. Because I'm a traditional crypto guy. I like to keep some of my stuff private on crypto, the way it should be. And
Absolutely.
I've been looking into ZK Snarks and kind of the changes for that, as well as ETH 2.0. I'm a big ETH guy, so it's kind of what I do when I'm not focused on Mintable, is just seeing the newest stuff in the space and trying to keep up to date, because crypto is just constantly changing. So you always have to be researching new stuff and see, hey, what was this thing I heard about?
Oh yeah, I'm 100%. If you've got a highly curated crypto Twitter feed, you can basically sit there all day and just see new stuff, but also see all the tribalism. But that's a different story. I quite like the NFT space because that doesn't feel like it's that everyone's kind of supporting each other a bit. That's what I feel anyway, because especially from the art kind of world, and as you say, people are happy to give things a go. Still, it's new enough for people to be experimental and hopefully give each other a kind of pat on the back and say nice try. Some of the other areas of crypto Twitter are less welcoming, but that's just where we are.
I definitely agree with that. The tribalism is I don't know if it's the biggest problem, but it's a big problem that we have in crypto. And one of the other things I did forget to mention, though, is crypto voxels. I jump in there about every month and see what's going on there. I don't own any land. I don't want to be bothered with having to update it and change the design every time I want to redecorate. So I just observe. I just like to float around and see if I can find someone, and then try to talk to them, and they never reply. And so yeah.
I totally agree. I think it's really interesting to see that space get taken up by art galleries. I think you can see that there is this need to put stuff up on a wall in a digital realm, and I think that's probably going to be a really significant space going forward. That the platform which captures the people who want to signal what they have, and it might be crypto voxels, could be Decentraland, could be, I think whatever it is going to have that little barrier to entry whereby, oh no, you can't show that because you actually don't have the token. I think everyone coming to the space realizing that when you're looking at something on the wall and that person does own it, that'll be a sort of key line in the sand for all of this. But it's good to have somewhere just to go around and at the touch of a button you've got I don't know how many art galleries.
So many art galleries, and I really like that some of them you can actually check out almost, right? It's got like a little buy button and you can buy them. And last time I was on, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, I was thinking there should be like a vending machine where I can do a crypto transaction and get something in this game. And this is like, I have a Oculus, I have a VR setup, and this is my biggest complaint with VR, is that why do we not have some sort of MMORPG where our character is tied to a cryptocurrency system, and the cryptocurrency is the in-game gold of the game, like World of Warcraft, but it was an actual ERC-20, right? And the economy is all real in that sense, like EVE Online or some of these other games that have real economies. That's what I want, and I feel like Crypto Voxels is like one step away from throwing up a vending machine, accepting some ERC-20, some DAI, and some Ether, and some other ones, and about a boom. You've got a whole in-game economy, and so I really, really want that. That's if that happens, I probably won't even be able to finish Mintable. I'll be in that game 24/7.
That's sort of what Decentraland's going for, isn't it?
I hope so. I really hope that they can get that out. There's a few other ones too. There's this one called Elysium VR, and I've been following them for like almost 2 years now, and it just looks like it's never coming out. It's so sad.
There's another one as well that was just announced like a couple of months ago, wasn't there? They were doing a fundraising. They were selling land parcels.
Really? What was that called?
Somnium, I think.
Somnium?
Yeah. It was called. Better fact check that.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
Somnium Space.
Yeah.
Somnium Space.
Oh, see, that's I don't know if that's just me or I feel like that's everyone, but I feel like everyone wants this virtual reality world that is tied to a real economy. So when you're, chopping wood or killing some monster, that you're earning some tangible cash.
Yeah.
Isn't that like player one, the Oasis, right? This is a real world that's going to be everyone's life in a few years. I would like that. Yeah, I really would.
Well, it'll come. It feels fairly inevitable.
So, is there a non-fungerbil that you'd like to see in the future?
I would like to see either. So I have two because we were just talking about VR. I want to see a VR gerbil, like a spacesuit gerbil, right? Like he's got a VR headset. He's got like some spacesuit, like some hepatic suit where he can feel everything, or a superhero, right? A superhero gerbil, right? Kind of the same thing. Got a suit on. Maybe it looks really cool. Maybe has a cape, or like I mentioned earlier, some rewards, right? It'd be interesting. Have we seen a reward system with NFTs where think of like CryptoKitties, right? You get one of these CryptoKitties and there's a reward attached to that one, incentivizing people to want it. I think that would be really interesting as well, right? Offering your podcast as a reward is also, an easy incentive, right? You can say if you got that one, you get the podcast.
We're definitely thinking about ways that we can do that and, incentivize or reward our token holders. Like having, bonus podcast material that's only accessible through, owning a gerbil token. Things like that we're exploring.
It's actually really easy for you to integrate something like that on your website where there's a member section and it just simply checks their wallet and says, hey, do they have one of our tokens? If they do, give them access to this membership section. And in that membership section, you have, all your VIP interviews or your extra content.
Yes. Well, this is, I guess this is where the early adopters really get paid off, because in the future, when they start getting airdropped, loads and loads of cool stuff, for all NFT products. I'm just not talking about gerbils here.
Yeah. And you could, you can even build a system too where you can send them real world stuff. We did that with a project a long time ago now, almost 5 or 6 months now. I'll give you a scenario. Your user, they have your gerbil and they're holding onto it. And on your website, you have a little form. It checks their address. They put in their information and it confirms like that they own the gerbil, and then they give you their shipping info. Submit that form, and then you can mail them out a T-shirt, some swag, a hoodie, whatever you want.
There's a lot to think about there. We could definitely have some fun.
You could do something really cool with that at a booth at a conference, couldn't you?
The possibilities are endless. As long as we keep minting gerbils, what could possibly go wrong? We'll find a way.
Well, I think don't gerbils replicate pretty quickly?
Yes, they
right?
do.
Aren't there supposed to be a lot of them?
They do. That's a good point. Well, we're having a lot of fun, certainly. Coming up with the sort of the initial nudge, but Twitter come back with some extraordinary stuff. You can't predict what we're going to have to do one week to the next, because the stuff that comes through describing what these things are just produce pictures of such extraordinary weirdness. But I like that, I think that's kind of part of the quirkiness of putting things out to crypto Twitter and seeing what you get back. So far, I'm enjoying the experiment hugely.
That's good, man. Crypto Twitter can be rough. It's just like Reddit. It can be really rough or it can be really rewarding. So I'm glad it's being rewarding for you guys.
Cool. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we've had a really good run through of various different edges of the NFT space, and we're going to keep a very close eye on our partner app, which is Mintable. I mean, clearly we're partners. We use you guys, and so good luck with the platform release that's coming up January, February, and we'll keep very close tabs on how it's all going.
Absolutely. I think once it's released, before it's released, we'll reach out to you because there's a good niche you'll be able to fill on the platform.
Amazing. That sounds very exciting.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Zach.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate coming on.
Not at all.
Have a good one.
Well, that was a great conversation, wasn't it? Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, very insightful.
Now it is time to go through some of the gerbil responses that we've had.
Yeah. People got really, really creative this month. Some really, really good responses. It was very hard to pick the winner.
Certainly. But 100x leverage gerbil, yeah, as you say, has definitely got everyone's creative juices flowing. We've had, like you say, some great responses. And should we jump into the first one?
Yeah, great. You go ahead, George.
At Where Kitty, thank you so much for this backstory. It's an absolute cracker. Here we go. What is that? Newbie gerbil looked at a big crater in the woods. Ah, answered his uncle. That is where 100x leverage gerbil tried to harvest hazelnuts last year using dynamite. We never saw him again. Newbie gerbil looked at the hole as he contemplated all the tempting opportunities. It was all about timing and correct calculations. Done right. His whiskers were vibrating with excitement. He knew for sure that he was the genius that would be the next 100x leverage gerbil.
Very nice.
Well, clearly there's going to be some leveraging and some explosive dynamiting going on. Thank you very much, Where Kitty.
I like that the leveraging is the hazelnuts and the dynamite.
Would it be anything other than that with gerbils?
Well, yes. So next we've got Alan Falcon with a short but very sweet and straight to the point backstory. 100x leverage isn't cool, he said, drawing his bow. You know what's cool? He asked, staring the gerbil in the eyes, not even looking at the target as he loosed his arrow. Infinite leverage. Bullseye. And the stranger shuffled away.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. That's quite a picture you paint.
That's a good visual picture there. It's got attitude. It's got balls.
Like it. Okay, so next up, Third Man Design. Thank you very much for this one. This opportunity won't last, said the devil. Dwayne the Rock Gerbil stood at the crossroads, considering the offer. The devil, it turns out, was an old white dude from a property investment seminar. Perhaps even, more surprisingly, he was also small enough to sit on Dwayne's shoulder. I can make you 100x gerbil, but it won't come for free, he whispered. On the surface, it was a good deal. His soul was, by and large, of little value. He spent most of his time swiping right, avoiding clickbait articles on social media, and wondering what TikTok was. And he was confident that the devil wouldn't lie to him about something like this. It was that leverage could cut both ways, but if you couldn't trust a property investor, who could you trust? Okay, boomer, he replied. Let's do it. Wow. It's got a lot in there. It's got Dwayne the Rock Gerbil, which very nearly made you a winner just for having that in it.
I mean, what a visual.
No offense to property investors out there either.
It wasn't such a distant past when I was also wondering what TikTok was.
Oh, right, yes.
How it became the most popular social platform without me even realizing it existed, I don't know. It's just something about our age, maybe.
No, it's not for us. It's not for us, Luke, fortunately. Right, next up.
At Kai Ghani. This one is very poetic. Yeah, thank you, Kai Ghani. 1x, 2x, 3x, 4. Not enough leverage for a gerbil who needs more. 4x, 5x, 6x, 7. Placing risky bets turns it up to 11. 10x, 20x, 30x, 50. Big winnings and losses can happen so swiftly. Onward, not stopping until 100. Check out the brass gerbil balls on this 100x trading hero.
Well, that's, again, very close to being a winner because I really wanted a cartoon with a gerbil with big brass balls. But we'll have to save that for another time.
Yes, I mean, that almost certainly would have won it had it not been for the next one.
For this wonderful backstory given to us by @theflaz. Here we go. 100x leverage gerbil's trembling paw hovered excitedly over the execute trade button. Relax, he told himself. You've done your own research. 2 separate Twitter accounts have said that Rodent Coin was, quote, due for a pump. And the charts don't lie. Something about wicks and wedges, they said. Ignore that little voice whispering, wrecked, wrecked, wrecked. Heroes know when to pull the trigger. Imagine yourself telling Mrs. Gerbil, honey, get packing. We're moving to a bigger cage and no one will mistake us for hamsters ever again. Time to go all in. The button is pressed. An immediate big drop. That's normal, right? Give it time. Hey, where's my trade? What's this? Alexa, what is margin call? So that's the winner. Thank you, the Flaz. It's got a fantastic visual you create there. 100x leverage was actually, designed for gerbils just like this.
Yeah, and what a punchline. My goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alexa is always there, listening, ready to help.
Yes, he
jolly good.
probably didn't really need to ask, actually. Alexa would have known anyway. So.
Yeah, would have known. Next time he should have left Alexa to do the trade. That would have worked out much better. Okay, so next up we have a new gerbil to tell you about.
And this gerbil needs a backstory.
What have we got for our listeners this time, Luke?
Zero knowledge gerbil.
Ooh. How do we even know that he's real?
The only thing we know about them is that they exist.
Right. Okay, well, that should certainly produce some interesting responses. So yes, zero knowledge gerbil it is. Go ahead and do your best creative endeavors. Long or short, we don't mind. We will read out the very, very best, and you will get an illustration done, and you will join the pantheon of historic gerbil NFTs.
Quite. Make sure you hashtag at NonFunGerbils and hashtag zero knowledge gerbil.
You can probably hashtag ZK gerbil as well.
You could ZK gerbil if you wanted. If you wanted to
zero
go.
knowledge is quite long.
Yeah, that's true. Should we just go ZK? Hashtag ZK gerbil.
Yeah.
ZK if you're in the UK. Yes, great. So you can find us on Twitter at NonFunGerbils, on our website, nonfungerbils.com. If you want to send us some ETH to support the show, you can send it to nonfungerbils.eth. And you can also email us at podcast@nonfungerbils. I think that just about covers it.
Yeah. Great stuff. Another great episode. Thank you, Luke. See you next time.
Thanks, George. Yes, see you next time.